So with me now, I have Eva Sagemo, right? Just finding the right way. Hello, Eva, how are you?
Hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine. Nice to have you here. You're about to tell us about a serious cyber attack that hit you last year, but from your group CFO point of view, without ruining your speech, why do you feel it's important to share such a story with your CFO person here within Scandinavia?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's very important to share because this is all about prepping other CFOs for what a cyber attack can do with your organization and what you need to think about as also part of your leadership team in an organization. So hopefully that will be inspiring for the listeners today.
Perfect. I leave the stage or the scene to you.
Thank you. So I didn't prepare any slides today, so I will tell the story a bit from our side, and I hope that will be inspirational for all of you. So to set the scene a bit, Tomra is a global company consisting of approximately 5,500 employees, and we operate in more than 100 countries through 3 autonomous business divisions. And we are a growth company, and we have grown over the last 20 years, also including acquisitions. And at Tomra, we decided to centralize IT back in 2021 with a reporting line then to CFO. And in this centralization project, we established a separate department focusing on security. And the strategy was then and is still to build up a holistic security structure and culture within Tomra. And we weren't quite finished when the cyber attack hit us back in July, but we were, I would say, well on our way. And we have been working according to a kind of like three-stage model where maturity was planned to be built over a 5-year plan. And as I said, a lot was done when the cyber attack hit us. And that was also the reason, we think to believe that was also the reason why we were able to take control of the situation back in July. And I tend to ask people when I talk about this, where were you on July 16th, 2023? I remember very well what I was. I was in Italy, the vacation has just started, and then on Sunday morning, I got a call from the CISO in Tomra, and that is not normal, right? And the conversation was very short and to the point, but at the same time, it was filled with a lot of unclarity, I would say. It was not entirely certain that the attack at Tomra was extensive. And we didn't, at that time, a point in time, we didn't have a complete overview of the situation. But still, I got this feeling that, or the sense that something was really, really wrong. So we decided to define it as a crisis. So the first thing I did then was to call Tomra's CEO, Tove Andersen, and she completely agreed and that we should mobilize for a crisis and then rather back down if it turned out to be less serious. And after we hung up, she called the chairman and I mobilized the crisis teams in Tomra. And this is also, I will come a bit back to that, but this is also important that you know how to think and act in such a situation. And just to give you a flavor, on July the 16th, that was a day with a lot of meetings. And at one point, the message was that, no, we have everything under control. We can just go back to normal. But in the next second, it's just kind of like blown in our faces, and the attack was really massive. So we decided to pull the plug. So that is to take down the data service centers in Tomra globally. And when you do that, and and you work with IT, you know that is not an easy decision to take. And in Tomra, we had just signed an agreement with a third party for support for operational safety, so information security team, SecOps, and also a company that would do incident response if we had an attack. So they were new to Tomra. They didn't know us that well, but they were called in, and we quickly understood that we needed to strengthen the team. So we called in a special global team from another company as well. And I think in a crisis like this, you need to understand your limitations. That is really key. And that is one of the, I would say, very important decision that we took early in the crisis to really get control of what to do next. And because we didn't really know what has hit us, what kind of damage that was done to our systems, and also how we could start putting things back up. And that is important. When you know that you have had an attacker in your system, you don't just put back things up, because it can be backdoors set up in the system that can hit you hard again. So, and that was also something that the investigation in Tomra for the the incident, was that we were so close to being subject to a ransom demand, either in the form of to being kind of like shut down from our systems, closed out of our systems, or that sensitive data could have been taken out. But since we took down our systems, we had full control of the situation, and we are very glad that we did that, even if it has come with a price of 200 million NOK to rebuild our infrastructure. And just important to set it also in a perspective is that it is important that this is not only an IT crisis for a company. It's so much more to think about. And for us, if our systems, so our machines, we have more than 100,000 machines globally, where more than 75% is connected back to our systems. So if our customers would have been impacted by the incident through the attacker, that would really damage our trust and reputation in the market. So that's decisions taken in a very hectic time, but looking back in hindsight, that was the right thing to do. And you just need to be bold and dare to take decisions in such a scenario. And that kind of links me into crisis management. In Tomra, for me, when I mobilized the crisis team in Tomra, I would do that on group level, but also in our 3 business divisions. So I would be leading the group team, and then divisions would then lead their crisis team, but they all work together. So we follow the same structure, we use the same communication, and that is important, that it's kind of like one voice in a crisis to both internal stakeholders, but also external stakeholders. And for us, we also work with an external company when it comes to crisis management training. And we just had a training during the spring. So this was really fresh in mind. And that is also very important to reflect on from a leadership team perspective. Because in a crisis, you shouldn't be in doubt of what to do, how to act, and who should take the different roles. So really think about the structure, what kind of names do you place into the different roles, and if you also have substitutes for those roles is important, because you need to act and you need to do that fast in a crisis like this. And also one more thing that I think is important learning from this incident, and also to give to the audience, is also how you run crisis management team meetings. So it is important to reflect upon that. Having a clear structure on how you run the meetings is important, because in a time like that, again, a lot of information is flying fast, and you work many hours. It's really unrealistic to think that you can remember and then log it afterwards. So having a clear agenda, asking yourself, do we have any new information since the last meeting? What does that information do with the case? Does it change how we look at our stakeholders? does it change how we look at the worst case scenario thinking? Do we need to take any new actions or decisions? And then make sure that you log it throughout the whole crisis. And one thing that is also very important to reflect on in a crisis like this is information and communication. That is so important, but maybe the most difficult thing. Because you need to think about how you communicate internally, but also externally. And so to really work with your communication teams in-house, but also think if you need to bring in external ones is important. Because it's all about how do you communicate to, for us, the stock exchange, how do you work with your investors, how do you work with your customers, and so everyone that is outside of your TOMRA company. And then also with all your employees. You want the people to run in the same direction, to have the same information, to trust what you are saying. So really think about what kind of data points do we need to give and how should we give it? Should we do town halls, emails, intranet, and so on and so forth? So really having a good understanding of how you should run your communication. And in TOMRA, I think also here we are quite proud of the culture in TOMRA. So we really stand together in the crisis. And I think that is also important. It's not given that your employee will cancel vacations and that they also will work non-stop for 8 months. But in TOMRA, they have done so. So I think that is also, I would say, a result of how we have managed the whole crisis and the rebuild of everything. So now we are closing up on our rebuild in TOMRA, and that feels good. We have most of our applications up and running again, our infrastructure for IT, our integrations between systems. So a lot has been rebuilt from scratch, and people feel, most of the people in TOMRA at least, feel that they are operational again. And that is important to have speed and also to be able to deliver to the market. So in TOMRA, it's no doubt that this crisis has accelerated our safety journey. As I said, we are in a good place. And we have used this crisis also to do some important transformation, both in terms of if you look at it from a technical point of view, we have done that, but also in how we have looked at strengthening the awareness for our employees, but also customers and suppliers. So to summarize a bit, my reflections is really that crisis management plan is important to define role, names, do trainings, super important. And also that you need to understand your weak spots in the systems, that you also need to understand what is your assets in your company, to protect them and to categorize them on criticality, because you can't take everything back at the same time. And also how you mitigate risk, because you need to define your own risk appetite in your company. So it is important to do that, but also to have a plan on how should you then be operational again, because that is also important for coming back to business as usual as fast as possible. And then work on the communication and also put a risk on the board agenda. And just very quickly on the CFO point of view, for me, not only managing the crisis, but also taking care of the whole finance setup. So ERP is done. What do you do? How do you put up your manual processes? How do you document them? How do you prepare for audit for that? How do you put it into the system again? And one thing that is important that is also difficult, or I don't know if it's difficult, but it's also, if you don't have access to your system, how can you follow and track and chase your cash? So that is also something that could be a pressure point for the CFO. And also to think about, will you be able to pay your liabilities or come into a situation where you breach your covenant, for example? So really do the right things before, if an event happen for you in a future scenario. So hopefully, I see my time is out. I hope that you have at least received some good input for crisis management for cyber attack. And if you would have any follow-up questions, it's just to contact me.